All right, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Free for All. It's Thursday night at 10 p.m. I'm your host, Big John, joined as always by my friend and co-host, Mr. Hodey Johns, and a very special guest tonight. We're going to be talking about the LP's gains in this election cycle and this year in general, as a matter of fact. We'll also be talking about the elections and what they mean perhaps nationally. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to start. The only thing I'll tell you is go ahead and, if you want, click on that, scan that QR thing right above Hodey's shoulder there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also see all the information there at the bottom. YouTube, X, Facebook. Feel free to follow me or Hodey on X. You could also follow our guest, Mr. Stephen Nekhaila. Go to lpnational.org or at stevennekhaila.org. And I'm sure a lot of other places. I'm so excited. Let's get started right away. Hodester, why don't you kick off with tonight's activities and festivities, I might add.
You bet. Super excited for tonight. I'm having a great night, but I couldn't possibly be having a better one than Mr. Stephen Nekhaila down there.
Would it involve the Broncos winning?
They're tied 7-7 against the lowly Raiders team right now. If you guys see me doing this every so often, there might be a big play going on the side. But the Broncos could lose, and it wouldn't matter because Liberty really won. My heart is that light right now. Okay, so I want to write his victory speech for him, but I'll let him give it himself. I have been super critical, obviously, Stephen. I've held your feet to the fire a few times. I've been really negative about, obviously, before you was much worse, but just being like, where are we going to go with this thing? But I'll give some commentary, but I'm going to let you and then Big John talk first. I'm just going to put it in perspective for everybody listening. I already saw like midway through last night's elections results that the LP had won more seats than we'd ever won in the last 4 years combined. And then it's been rolling in as more of these counties come in, win after win after win, that it is, and they're for positions that matter, legal, like police positions, law enforcement, school boards. These are things, libertarians, oftentimes we get too distracted by the presidential, Senate, representative stuff, but we're actually getting into these type of executive leadership positions that are going to matter. Winning, this is what the LP is for, to win elections for libertarians, and winning more in this cycle than we have in the last 4 years combined. And at this point, it may even be 6 years combined. I'm having trouble keeping up. I wanted to try and and congratulate everything, and it just keeps pouring in. Stephen, why don't you tell us your feelings and your thoughts as to why that happened?
Well, absolutely. Well, first off, I cracked out the Kirin for tonight. Got the good beer, and I'm sorry if I'm a little. I think I got allergies or something rolling in, so excuse me for that. Okay. But what can I say? I mean, we had a fantastic November 5th. I mean, my gosh, for an off election year, this is phenomenal. I mean, I've seen midterms go back. We've probably had 30, 40 wins. I mean, we're probably around 30. We may go north of 30 right now for an off year. And this isn't just like Soil and Water Board or Dog Catcher, which, we're talking city council. We're talking mayoral races. We're talking police commissioners in Detroit. So these are really phenomenal wins. And I just think there's a lot of momentum right now. We got off the 2024 election, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it might just because I'm close to politics, or it might be an objective reality, but it just seems like talk about politics in general just hasn't slowed up. Normally, everybody puts on their political commentator hat in 2024 in the fall, even if they're not political, but it just seems to have gotten more and more consequential as we get into 2025. And it just seems like in general, people are getting really engaged in politics, and our people are getting very engaged, and they're winning. Right now, I think the success rate so far is about 2/3. About 66% of our candidates have won this election, which is phenomenal. That's awesome. And we're still waiting for the final tallies to get in. We sent out a presser today, a little email, just letting everybody know, hey, we got these great wins in. But to see the party in a state of victory and going out there and getting candidates elected into very nice positions in government, and those are going to be people that are going to be incumbents for next time around is really awesome. So I'm very happy about it. I think you guys are too, and I'm thrilled. I don't know what else to say. We did better than expected. It was phenomenal to see.
Big John, how did this happen?
Man, first of all, let's give credit where credit is due. You mentioned at the outset, you and I have both been critical recently of LP, especially at the national level. We've also been super critical with some, not all, some state affiliates and the way they've chosen to behave. Stephen, to his credit, has always come on once or twice with Paul Dar, the vice chair, as well. And look, he's been like a boss. He stood there, he took our questions, he stayed calm, he gave us answers, he told us his plans, and he said, look, we're working on stuff. We understand. I have to, there's a whole lot of considerations that a lot of folks aren't always aware of. So first and foremost, Stephen, hey man, all props to you. I don't know how else to say this, and I know it's sexist and it's for someone of my generation, but you sat here like a man, you answered the questions like a man, you conducted yourself like a man, and I don't mean to be sexist by that, but you know what I mean. And that's the best way I can put it. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I am so hardened for a lot of things. And you could see this incrementalism in it culminated fabulously the other day on the 5th, to your point. Absolutely. More victories than the LP has had in a while. As Hodey did the research, I didn't even realize it was this good. Like combined the last 4, 5, 6 years, we matched that this time around. So again, much kudos for that. The second thing is also I'm hardened by what's been happening internally. I have my position on what I think the LP should look like. We all do, right? Like, what's that old thing? We agree on 95% of it and we'll scratch our eyes out over the last 5%, right? But I mean, I think what we all saw, and we saw it beginning with Michigan, with California, with Colorado. Is it Wisconsin, Hodey, that I think is making moves right now as well towards that path, right? These are very encouraging, not just to people like me, like say the old pragmatists or classical liberals or however you want to describe me, but to the people who truly believe in decentralization, who are really more hardcore along those lines. I'm hearing the same thing. You go over to the LP Allies, the LP Alliance, they're happy with what's happening too. I mean, we all think things could be better, right? We all have our 2 cents. But I doubt, other than one very specific faction, that anyone is dissatisfied with the direction you've steered the party the last couple of months. Even some of your critics have to begrudgingly admit things are on a better path. They're heading in the right direction. So Hodey, I was talking to Stephen, but I'm answering your question, which is like, I'm very hardened by what I saw. I'm very hardened. I'm very, very happy over what I saw. And hey, let's just go very quickly to the comments. Our friend Free at Are You Smarter Than a Politician goes, I love watching the party rack up the wins. Who doesn't, Free? Who
Amen,
doesn't?
brother.
Absolutely. Amen. Absolutely, man. And then Amity. The LP is doing great work. So impressed with all the wins. Amity, I agree with you. And Amity is, look, she's part of the Republican Liberty Caucus, like my friend and co-host on Liberty Lens here, Mr. Mike Termott. We all believe in liberty, right? But certain folks, and I think it's worth mentioning, like the Republican Liberty Caucus did manage to take a couple of libertarian folks from the LP, but they were at least very clear about it. We think the best thing we could do is influence the Republican Party away from Trump, away from MAGA, away from the illiberal policies it holds, like blowing boats out of the water without any cause, right?
I just real quick, because
Sure.
I don't want to interrupt your steam. Amity let's say because she's so impressed with the Libertarian Party and was so disgusted with the Republican Party, has already resigned from that.
She has.
Republican
Hey,
Liberty Caucus.
Things are
We'll take her back.
We'll take her back at a moment's notice, right?
Please,
but hey, Amity, I'm sorry if I slighted you. I may have been going off of stale information, but
she's awesome.
Hey,
but it just happened today, so you're okay.
Honestly, I didn't mean it as a diss by saying you're in the RLC. It's just I meant to show that there are still people, Stephen, and I think this is something you could talk about, which is given the Trump administration's shortcomings, and I'm trying to be as fair as possible, given that a lot of libertarians who supported Trump as running as, quote, the most libertarian president in history, right? Bless you. And the same folks who wanted him at our national convention. A lot of those folks, very few hardliners. Let's call a spade. Former chair Angela McArdle is still among those diehards. I'm assuming Heises as well, who still want us to be a farm team for the Republican Party, to support Trump, to support MAGA, because they feel that's the best path to liberty. Most of those people who have stayed behind in the LP are saying, we were duped. We made a mistake. Trump is not our guy. We did not vote for bombing people. We did not vote for his personal army to go from city to city to enforce whatever they think is a proper behavior, right? Given that, and given that the nation itself, beyond the LP politics, let's face it, the fifth was not, despite what President Trump may claim, it was not good news for the Republicans, right?
No,
I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon to say they're done. I'm not there yet. But you can't spin this as anything other than we had a bad night if you're a Republican. And if you're a Democrat, other than Mamdani in New York, it wasn't like the radical leftism, right? It was more the old school, I would say, maybe 1990s Democrats, right? But anyway, I didn't want to put words in your mouth. Go ahead. Tell me what you thought of election night, right?
Absolutely. I was just going to say, because I think there was a large contingent of voters that voted for Trump that thought they were being sold a bill of goods that is totally different than what they have today. I mean, when there was a lot of libertarians that voted for Trump, a lot of big libertarians within the libertarian movement, right, that have traditionally supported or still support the Libertarian Party, but they cast their vote for Trump. And I think people are slowly starting to realize just how different this administration is shaking up in terms of the conflicts that are continuing. We didn't get the Ukrainian war stopped in with one phone call on day one.
Right.
There's tensions in the Middle East that continue to flare up. There's the Taiwan question, et cetera, et cetera. And on top of that, just here domestically at home, I mean, Pam Bondi, you ask any Floridian that lived under red flag Ron, what her 2A stance is, and she's out there trying to block the Supreme Court from hearing a case that would effectively remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles and shotguns from the NFA. On top of a litany of things, we still don't have. I'm still waiting on that Fort Knox audit. Doge found a lot of things wrong, and the Republicans essentially still voted for the big beautiful bill. And I think the most glaring thing that happened is they went after Thomas Massie. And, we can say we want about, Massey's a Republican, whatever, but I think he is the most principled man on Capitol Hill that's currently in Congress. He's a fiscal conservative. He's libertarian leaning. And he said, no, I'm not going to vote for this thing. And what did the GOP do? The supposed first libertarian president, and he went and said, we're going to primary Massey. J.D. Vance is out there saying the same thing. Massey's not a team player. He's not towing the party line. So what is the message that's being said to libertarians or conservatives or the MAGA crowd that really wanted the Epstein files to be unredacted? They wanted to see the government severely cut. They wanted to see all these things, anti-war, et cetera, et cetera. They're not getting anything they bargained for. And so the veil is slowly starting to be lifted. And you have all these people realizing, wow, the GOP is not my political home. I'm a libertarian. I'm going to move back to the Libertarian Party. And I think we're starting to see people come back to the LP. I've known a lot of LP guys try the RLC thing out, and they come back and they say, hey, there's no sex in the champagne room. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
I'm coming back home, and I think one interesting thing. So a couple weeks ago, I had on X Space with Fernando Ferfalaguire, and he is from Argentina. And I asked him about Javier Milei and some of the mistakes he made and some of the good things that are going on there. And it was really interesting to see the Liberty Advances Party, Milei's party in Argentina. They were slated to do really badly at the polls. Well, I know some Argentines here in Key West, and I asked them, what do you think of Milei? Oh, we're richer, we're traveling more, things are getting better. And so there was two worlds there. And of course, they came out very successful.
Yes.
And that to me was a huge win personally, because Milei and his party has spurred multiple parties in Latin America arising. The Venezuelan Libertarian Party, the chair lives in exile. He lives in hiding. There's a Libertarian Party in, I believe it's Uruguay. There's Libertarians popping up now, a renewed movement in the United Kingdom, in the Netherlands, and all parts of the world. And so I see this as a part of a growing international libertarian movement. And I truly believe that our job right now is to capture the next generation. So Gen Z voted overwhelmingly for Mamdani. We have to ask ourselves, why is that? Well, if we look at the data, libertarians tend to be very low in institutional trust, and Gen Z in general is very low in institutional trust. So they're saying, okay, the system doesn't work for us. We're going to elect somebody who's totally different, somebody younger, somebody who's of course, singing the siren song of socialism.
Right.
But I think with that, what I believe is going to happen is we're seeing a divide in politics. We're seeing a rise in the radical socialists in the Democratic Party, and the like you said, the 90s sort of Democrats are wrestling with that right now.
Yeah.
And I think the Republicans as well are wrestling with the fact that they're losing the youth. They're not actually doing the things that they were supposedly put in office to do. Their generation see that, and you also see this growing right-wing nationalist movement in the United States as well. That's a concern.
Oh, it has been for a while.
Yeah, and it's only growing. And you asked me this 10 years ago, I really would have thought it would be socialism versus libertarianism as the two poles. But now I see sort of a multipolar political landscape where I hope it's going to be libertarian, right-wing nationalist, and socialist, which isn't a great picture, but I think it shows that we have to capture that market share.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is you're right. It's more of an XYZ axis, right? It's not just linear, right? So I agree with you. New York especially was very weird. It's like a tempest in a teapot, because not only did you have somebody who at the time he won the primary was polling at 6%, right? The Democrats fumbled their own ball in New York, right? Adams, the sitting mayor, never had a chance for whatever reason. I mean, he embraced Trump, possibly to get out of going to prison, right? Then you had Cuomo.
New York politics is a whole different game. That's
trust me. I've spent the whole week explaining it to a lot of people on Twitter, because the first thing is, why is this Mamdani listed 3 times on the same ballot? Fraud. And I was like, even our own Terry, I had to explain it to her. No, they have fusion candidates here. Although for the life of me, Stephen, I've asked Larry Sharp, I've asked Mike Termott, I've asked Chase Oliver. I'll ask you. Maybe you know the answer. Sure. I'm struggling to find out how on the New York City ballot, I can't find the Libertarian party line, but I find the Stand and Deliver party. I find the Protect the Animals party. I find every party that seems to come up every 6 months in New York, but I can't find the Libertarian. And to be fair, I can't find the Green Party either. And it seems to me like when our friend Larry Sharp is polling at 9, 10, 11% in New York State, that we can't get his name on the ballot, but the Stand and Deliver party forms and gets on the ballot just to have Andrew Cuomo run on it in 3 months. Talk about ballot access, and talk about what really one of the more underestimated, is that the thing, or under noticed thing that keeps us from winning more of these elections is the ease to ballot access, right?
I was talking to Oliver Hall about this a couple weeks ago. He's been in ballot access for a very long time. He runs his nonprofit that deals with ballot access. I think it's a 501c3 or C4. The reality is, and we know it as well as anybody else, but we supposedly live in a democracy. But if I wanted to go out and run in Tennessee or run in Texas or whatever, I risk getting sued off the ballot. The Republicans tried to sue the Libertarians off the ballot in 2020, failed. The Democrats sued the Green Party off the ballot successfully because they changed the law in a bipartisan effort last minute.
Right.
In Tennessee, you have to get something like, I forget, 4 or 5% of gubernatorial turnout and number of signatures, which is thousands, if not tens of thousands, to maintain ballot access. Whereas the Republicans and Democrats need something like 500 signatures to run, and that's even for any partisan election. It
Right.
could be, it doesn't matter. I'm not sure what their constitution is. It could be sheriff. It could be city council.
Right.
So the reality is, I mean, we fight an uphill battle when it comes to ballot access. Now, we are the most successful, and we've carved out our niche as being the pioneers of ballot access, signature gathering, and maintenance. But you look at Elon Musk and the supposed America Party, and we gain a lot of free press from, trying to court Elon into the LP. But I think he looked at the numbers and realized, not only would it be difficult to gain ballot access, but also to run his candidates and everything else. And it seems like he's gone back to the GOP and might be supporting Vance in 2026. But I think the writing's on the wall for the Republican Party. I mean, they just haven't turned out what they promised. We've remained principled, as we always have, and said, look, I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. And I wish I could feel good about saying that, but that's just a reality that.
Stephen, I feel great about saying I told you so. I'm past the age where I have any shame towards saying I told you so, because while it was happening, I promised people I would tell them so. Like, you could go back and watch all these episodes. Even when you were on, I said, all right, we know what's going to happen. Hodey,
of course,
went through every historical cycle of hey, let's merge with the paleos. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then the next thing you know, you're flushed down the toilet as soon as the election's over, right? Especially in this country. So I think you're right. But I am glad to see, like you said, but let's catch up to some of these comments, because some of them are making me chuckle. Some of them I'd like you to address. So let's start off with Amity says, I tried to infiltrate the GOP, but too much ick in the establishment. All right. I'm sorry I slandered you by saying you were still in the RLC, Amity. Please forgive me. Let's see. Terry says, Hodey, Scary Terry will be nice to you for 1 week if you ask Steve to answer my email.
Hey, Steve, I have a question for you. Will you please answer Terry's email?
I absolutely will.
Yeah, Terry.
You
don't want
Not a problem.
Terry is Terry rather is the nicest person on the planet, and definitely you should answer her email. Okay, we don't want to be on that side. No, we don't. We need 434 more Massies in the House. Sure, I'll go along with that. Absolutely. Also, not just Massey, but Rand Paul has been targeted for primarying by the president because he dared question his tariffs and his unconstitutional strikes on those boats in the international waters. The people want to know. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but Grumpy Gnome, thanks for watching and thanks for the comment.
No mad dog.
Free. Amash has expressed interest in running for the 2028 Libertarian Party presidential nomination. What are your thoughts on this, Stephen?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Amash is he's a libertarian. We got to hang out in Michigan. It was really awesome to see him there in his home turf. And I don't know what he's going to do next, but I can only speculate. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, yeah, Amash would be an amazing candidate for 2028. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable, and he's got a great base. So we'll see what happens. But as long as we have the infrastructure to support candidates like Amash, and the Libertarian National Committee does its job to create that infrastructure and support people like him, then maybe we'll actually get him to run for president. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big Amash fan for the longest time, more so than Massey. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I love Massey, but I love Amash more. Maybe it's a matter of style or communication, but personally, I love Amash. Hey, if you could do anything next, let him know he can come on the show. I've been trying to get to him for months. He's just not easy to get a hold of. Grumpy Gnome again. The Republicans are the 90s Democrats. Okay, I'll go along with that. They're hanging on to power, and it's their last little bit of power. I'll agree with that. What else? Mark Sean Pools. Why require $60 billion, $20 billion from the INF, $40 billion from the USA if Argentina are so financially healthy I came in late. Perhaps I missed something. And I think we're talking about the currency swap that they did, which was, as we discussed, Hodey, conditioned on Milei winning and implementing more free market reforms than Trump himself is willing to do here in the U.S. Like, I don't. So talk to that. Talk to us what you think about that currency swap valuation. Call it whatever you want. But basically, we bought 20 billion of their currency in exchange for U.S. dollars. Helps them get on the path towards dollarization. Strengthens their standing in international trade, and it was given on the condition that A, Milei win, meaning his party advanced in the midterm elections, and B, that he continued to implement free market reforms. Stephen, talk to me about the irony of Trump or anybody in that administration of his demanding free market reforms of anybody anywhere in the world.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's totally it's an odd position because Trump and Milei are apparently close. They're friends or friendly. I think Milei looks at Trump as sort of this subversive figure, and I think that's what he sees himself as in Argentina. Obviously, if I could choose between Trump or Milei, I'm Milei is walking the walk and talking the talk. I was actually on this Russian US TV a few weeks ago talking about exactly that. It was a very interesting interview because the anchor was speaking Russian and I had somebody translating, so it was kind of interesting. And they asked me what I thought about Javier Milei. Of course, he's doing a great job. They asked me what I thought about the bailout, and I said, look, it's not a libertarian thing. The U.S. Libertarian Party, we do not support giving money to any country, including Argentina, even if it means he's a libertarian. But we, of course, support Javier Milei fully. So the fact there's a currency swap going on now, it's interesting. I spoke with Fernando a few weeks ago, and he had mentioned that one of the things Milei did is he used a chainsaw to everything, which from a libertarian perspective is fantastic. But he said, maybe if you use, when you cut your lawn, you don't use a chainsaw, you use like a trimmer.
Yeah, it's using a scalpel instead of a chainsaw, right? Like if he had been a little more, I get it.
So I think perhaps in these dramatic cuts, there's certain things. Of course, the country is very poor, and there's certain things that didn't get the funding, et cetera, et cetera. And so in the race to get to that anarcho-capitalist utopia that we all talk about, there might need to be some adjustments to the way he's going about it. I don't know. That seems to be my impression. But even Milei himself had mentioned something in that regard. But I still think that the country, I mean, Javier Milei said a year ago, we're not going to print any more money. Inflation is going to go down. And we see inflation going down. He said, no hay plata. There is no money. There's going to be austerity. People are going to get poor. And they did. But things are getting better. And you see the free market opening up there. The people that are primarily against Milei in Argentina, they are the corrupt socialists. They're the ones who benefit from the system. It really is corruption. I mean, the ones that are against Milei, they benefited from the current system or the prior system, and they want to maintain that system. And they are in the death throes. They're trying to retain their power and control and pad their pockets. And Milei is against it. And I think the people feel that. And so as time goes on and the libertarian experiment continues to succeed in Argentina, and I hope they go back to being the biggest importer of F-150s and a rich country and everything else like they were in the 80s and the 90s before the economic collapse. It's going to take time. They suffered from socialism for a very long time, and it's going to take some time to unwind. So, yeah, I'm not for the bailout. I don't know all the details. I'm not sure if it's a currency swap. I don't know what we're going to do with all those pesos.
Right. But it's a false currency swap. And when you listen to Bessent or Trump talk about it, they say, well, we made money already. Yeah, because you primed the market. When the U.S. buys that type of, I knew a trader.
Currency.
Yeah, when I was on Wall Street, I knew a trader who owned 85% of New Zealand over a weekend. Right, it happens, and then he drove up the price and pulled out the rug. That's the way. That's what happens. The next
it's a pump and dump. I don't know. It could
maybe
be like Trump
it is.
coin.
Hey, listen, who's made more on crypto than Trump while he's been in office, right? All right, this one's for Hodey. Hodey, are you wearing any pants tonight?
Oh, hi, Chris. If you had subscribed to your Hodey Plus, you would know the answer to that question.
The Hodey OF account.
Renew your Hodey OnlyFans.
Is that where the QR code goes?
Yeah, that's where the QR code goes.
Please buy our merch and our posters. I'd love to show those on the screen, but I can't. For those who are curious, I have some Xbox jammies on. I don't think you can actually see it.
Oh, okay. We saw it.
Yeah.
We saw it.
There you go.
No need to see it anymore, Hodey. But yeah, we saw it. Okay.
Comfort is key, but I'm fine with pulling back the veil over the curtain here.
Hodey's got a LAN party going on the side.
Yeah.
Hodey fans.
Hodey fans trademark by Philip.
Fantastic.
He jumped on it before you did.
Since I got Philip here and he's in the discussion, LPA. I'm sorry. I know we kind of want to move to general election stuff, but you gave me like 30 seconds worth of victory speech, and I kind of was looking for more.
Please.
I was kind of looking for more in the ballpark of like 2 minutes here.
No. I mean, I could go longer. I could go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on. Before we move on, and I promise I'll let you tee it up. I'm going to give you your time. But I want you to answer this question because we did this show last week. I want you to address it. Mm-hmm. Isn't Milei corrupt as well? We can't just blindly follow because he has an L by his name. So you take that one, Hodey.
Yeah, I'm going to highly recommend last week's episode. First of all, we go into this in a little bit of detail, but the short answer is yes. He shut down an investigation. 2 investigations, one into his sister, who was blatantly caught on tape stealing money that is actually supposed to go to disabled people. And she and a bunch of other people stealing it and dead to rights. And he just said, nope, we're not investigating that, issued a royal decree to shut it down. He did another one with his Libra, the rug pull. He worked with blatant, like well-known rug pull crypto scammers. This was not like who are these people in the medical or in the
he wasn't
in the financial world.
Yeah, he wasn't duped. Yeah.
And it turns out the Argentinian government, we got a lot of documents that showed that he and the Argentinian government were backing it, and he shut down that investigation as well. Things are not all's well. Like, okay, so incredible. He went from like 80 billion pesos spending per year to $67 billion. I mean, think about that in terms of America. That's like going from 5 trillion a year in spending to 4.2 trillion in spending. That's an incredible accomplishment. Year 2, the year after that, he goes to 120 billion pesos spending. So he does that little cut. And then, so bringing back to America example, it's like 5 trillion spending to 4.2 trillion spending to 8.9 trillion in spending, right? Like, it's just like, oh no, like we weren't quite there, right? So Milei is still up in the air. Look, he's a populist. He's still very wrong on social issues. One of the, if we're going to stick to just the corruption part here, which is the question, I'll try to do just that. He has unleashed the police on critics. They no longer need a warrant to seize somebody's property, to detain them even for up to 12 hours. In fact, they don't even need any good valid reason to detain somebody for up to 12 hours. So, and unfortunately, this has been used on people that are just critical of him and the government. And so the reason you saw this back and forth, because we actually saw Milei take it on the chin in Buenos Aires in the cities, because that's, of course, where most of his opposition comes from, and is that dense Buenos Aires province. It's the cities, right? And think of it like America, right? When we're suppressing your right to protest, is that going to affect, the middle of Montana or New York City more, right? And so when Milei is suppressing protest, this obviously is affecting the cities much more. And so, these are kind of the protest votes. But I think what happened is people saw the results of that election and they're like, cool, the Peronists are coming back. And everybody else in the next wave of elections through all the other provinces were like, no. Milei is bad, but like, we cannot have Peronism back. And so that's kind of the game they're playing right now. The currency swap is complicated enough that I want to save it for I'll save it for what I said last week's episode. There is a classical liberal push for currency swaps. So I don't want to stress this as something that's just like super anti-libertarian. You are not incorrect in that it gives the U.S. John pointed this out last week, disproportionate pull over what Argentina will do if they might give us, for example, a military base there so that we can commit regime change in Venezuela.
Yep.
Listen, you shouldn't trust politicians further you can throw them. That includes your favorite politicians, especially. And especially when they're populist, right? Like, so absolutely, I'm not telling you put down any of these red flags. And there's some that have crossed the line for red flags. Like they're just bad, right? Like this is a person of bad character. But we can say, like, as libertarians and free marketers, is there still a lesson to be said for some of these reforms that he's made? For example, the elimination of rent controls was incredible. He actually did eliminate a bunch of departments before consolidating them all into one bigger department. So that kind of sucks. But like that first year when he eliminated those departments, massive fiscal advancements for the country. And he only messed up when he decided to create a bigger government. And so we actually can use him, even if we can't say entirely like he's our hero. We can point to something he did before he undid it to say, like, look how well that actually worked before he kind of screwed the pooch.
Right. No,
and I like to say,
go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I like to say that when a libertarian, when we finally have our first libertarian president in office, the first person who's going to call for the removal will be another libertarian.
Oh,
yeah.
of course.
We hold our people's feet to the fire, and I understand that.
Well, you know, and for those of us old enough to remember the promise of Reagan when, you know, we said, oh, here's a guy who listens to Milton Friedman. He'll fix stuff, you know.
Right.
And for the most part, he did economically. I'm not going to speak about any other policies, but economically, he did fix things. And he warned people, we're going to go through some pain, man. You're going to see high interest rates. You're not going to be able to afford new mortgages for a couple of years. But if we stick to this, things will come down. And I do believe in free trade, despite what Trump thinks. Reagan did not love tariffs, right? We've covered that. So I think Milei might be in the same position, but he suffers from the same thing that Trump suffers from, or in our case, it's a blessing, which is they're both populists. The second they think the people are like, boo, you know, they'll change their tune because that's what they are at heart. They love the adulation. They need the approval. So, but Hodey, before we go on to the national stage, you said you wanted a couple of minutes of time to talk to Stephen about the LP advances.
Yeah, appreciate that. So I just want to say that part of this, and you guys mentioned, like with thanks to LPA, some of those changes that occurred in Colorado that just had to happen, right? They're trying to get our candidate off the ballot. That was unacceptable, especially the direction that to call anybody a Liberty Republican in Colorado right now, the people that they were advertising were not. This was not the next coming of Thomas Massie, right? And so even if you agreed with the strategy, which, by the way, do it the Republican way, don't do it the Libertarian way, but even then, like, it was no good. The taking back of Wisconsin was huge. It was something they didn't think would happen, and getting that back from the MAGA, like, saboteurs, frankly, there was big. And then we've seen a huge change on the LNC. And this is not simply like anti-LPMC stuff, but essentially people of those persuasions that we need to keep selling out what Angela embezzlement is good, actually, like, you know, like kind of, or she didn't embezzle, but if she did, it was okay. And the phone calls weren't that bad, but if they were bad, it still didn't matter, kind of thing. And I think you stepped up. You censured LPNH, which was a long time coming. I know you didn't want to do it. Like, I get that in the middle of, like, this isn't something you want to have a victory speech about. You wanted your victory speech to be, hey, Ben Weir changed his tune. We're cool with Jews and blacks and a big diverse LP again. And that's not the result that you got, but it had to happen, right? Like when you have a manager taking a dump in the fries at Wendy's and boiling that up and serving it and saying that it's Wendy's, you had to do something, right? And you actually did a thing that you didn't. Obviously, you tried the alternatives. You tried everything else to get that fixed. And this is just what had to happen. And I got to say, as somebody who followed along on those emails, that doesn't happen unless you said, hey, guys, this needs to happen. People were waiting for that. I think, like, because the first vote to censure was like four votes for it. Like, it wasn't even close to passing. And then I think
it was. I think it was objected to. I think it was objected to the consideration of the motion. The first.
Yeah. Oh, right. So right, and that one that didn't even happen. Right. And so there wasn't even a consideration of the motion, and they just needed you to step up. And I know this sounds like I'm going to end this with it not being a dour thing, because here's the other big thing. In addition to the elections that you won with literally no budget, negative budget, I believe you just turned in the first positive budget that we've had in like forever as well. So please brag about all that as well. I know brag about doing the tough but right thing,
Right.
but also about how that affected, because that absolutely influenced the bottom line. I mean, this is like connecting the dots. LPNH gets censored. These two liability states get fixed, and people are like, oh, this might be something I can actually trust again, which is something that like I was having a problem with, and I think a lot of people are having common sense with. So yeah, talk about the money, talk about getting things squared away for this being a reasonable alternative to the other two parties. Again, I know you may not want to brag, but your role in making that happen, please.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, back in February, I was looking at the numbers, and I'm a numbers guy. You know, the numbers either make sense or they don't, and the numbers are bad, and the numbers aren't where I want them to be yet. I'm adamant about getting us there, but I was staring down the barrel of a negative $15,000 a month deficit. We had about $150,000 in the bank, so that gave us about 10 months. There was a back and forth on, what are we gonna do with the building? I tried my best to, see if we could fix it up and then sell it. And hopefully we'd have to sell it in the fall. And will we have enough money by the fall to actually get to selling the building and not have to furlough staff? And, there was a lot of questions, and it seemed like the safest answer at the time, given what we would have made if we fixed it up and sold it at an elevated value versus a surefire sale. It just ended up being, we need to sell this thing. It's a liability, and we need the cash. We haven't had to use the extra cash, as a matter of fact. And around that time, my vice chairman, Paul Dar, he met a gentleman up at LibertyCon, or was it for LibertyCon or Freedom something with the Students for Liberty. LibertyCon, that's yeah. And he met a man named Jim Babka, who many of you probably know.
I've had him on the show. Jim's a good guy.
Jim's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable, and he approached us and he said, "Look, we did this thing back in the late '90s and 2000s called Archimedes, and I want to introduce you to some of the key players in that project. And Perry Willis was one of them, and I'd like for you guys to consider taking this on." So a week went by, and we got after that first meeting, we got back hold of Jim and said, "Hey, we're interested. How did this work? What did you have to say?" Because at the time, I was looking and saying, what can we actually do to bring us back in that direction? And it was on sort of the same wavelength as Archimedes, and we have to go after members, we have to go after people. How do we best go about that? And so Jim introduced me to Perry Willis. Perry Willis was the executive director at the time during the original Project Archimedes. And we went from 10,000 members, which we currently have now, 10,000, it's a little bit under 10,000 dues-paying members, to 30,000 dues-paying members and a $3 million a year budget back in like 1999, 2000. So adjusted for inflation, that's probably what, $9 million today, $6-7 million today, around there. So we're looking at a huge increase in a very short amount of time. And that's historical numbers. That's something that actually happened. It brought aboard a lot of new people. It brought on board a lot of future leaders. It brought in a lot of money. And so we said, okay, great. So a couple months ago, I hired Perry Willis on board. He's doing a lot of the copy and a lot of the direction for Archimedes. I spoke to Sergio Serrato, who's from a company called Iron Light. They're a libertarian data firm. And Jim Bob introduced me to them, and flew out to California, pitched the project to Mr. Chris Rufer, who many of you know. He's a longtime libertarian, tomato tycoon out in the West. And he said, yes, I'm going to support this. Here's a check for $44,000. So this was actually prior to our positive month. That was actually a month we spent a lot of money. And so we went ahead, and we're in the process right now of phase one is cleaning up our data. We have about 1 million data records of libertarians that have gone onboarded. They've messaged the national party, signed up for our newsletter, became a donor over the years, etc. And so we have about 1 million records, and we're in the process of cleaning that out. We've contracted them. It's been an issue for about 3 or 4 years now that our data's a mess. When we send out an email, we're only sending out to like 1% of that. And pretty soon we're going to be sending out to hundreds of thousands of people. So when an email goes out, or a text goes out, or an email or a mailer goes out, it's going to go out to way more people than it was before, orders of magnitude more. On top of that, we're working with Iron Light. There's 700,000 known registered libertarians in the U.S. That doesn't include states like Texas. There's 27 states that don't have voter registration, but we're in the process of acquiring that data through them. And we're going to be marketing to them through what we call the Parity Project, because we want to be at parity with Republicans and Democrats within the next 10 years in terms of visibility, money, and we want to get candidates elected. We'll be at parity with the other parties, and with the decline of really the GOP and the Democrats, it's it's prime time. And so we're in that process. About a couple months ago, I said, let's look at everybody who's donated over a certain amount of money going back 10 years. And we sent them a pitch. And we said, look, this is the Libertarian Party. These are our objectives. It's not quite the Parity Project pitch, but we sent them out a pitch. From that one mailer, we made $40,000.
Mm.
And so just even reaching out to these people that haven't been touched in years, we said, look, this is our pitch. This is phase one of this Archimedes. Phase two is once we get the data, we get everything cleaned up and onboarded, we're going to be going to the clearinghouses. We're going to be texting. We're going to be going on social media. We have mobile identifications. We know who people are. We're going to be going after our people who are the lowest hanging fruit and saying, we're going to be pitching this project and saying, look, are you into this? Come join us. Come back to the Libertarian Party. Get involved. Get engaged. And from that, I'm hoping that when we're successful, we're going to see not only taking care of a lot of this deficit that we've been experiencing, on top of the fundraising, everything we've been trying to do, on top of the change in leadership, the change in direction, and the successes and the wins that we've had, just as recent as 24 hours ago. We want to engage the sleeping giant and get them into the Libertarian Party and get really, really serious about using this data and reaching out to people. Once we figure out the bottom of that funnel, say, okay, these are the conversions we're making. What is that profile? Now we can start going after the general population, trying to target those 27 states that don't have voter registration data, going after those folks and going after the people that may be libertarian, that meet our profile, and get them to join the party. So this is really huge. We haven't done this in 25 years. When I talked to Jim Babka, he said, I really didn't think you were going to message me back. I thought that after that first meeting, we were done. I said, how could you think that? He goes, I've tried this before. The LLC's never been interested in anything like this. You're the first one that actually picked back up the phone and made this happen.
That's amazing.
So for the past 4 or 5 months, I'm working with our excellent executive director, Hannah Kennedy. We have an amazing, amazing, amazing staff. I'm so proud of our staff. They're so dedicated. They're the ones that really move the party forward. They work 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, doing the things that we need them to do full time. They're clearing their plates. We're putting everything into the Parity Project. And once this project gets its wheels off the ground, that's going to be our number one priority as far as membership and fundraising. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. And over the next few months, I think we're going to see a lot more in the ways of positive growth, membership growth. And I think we're going to get a lot of new members, a lot of new people into the party and future candidates and leaders. And I'm really stoked about it. And I'm really excited. That's all.
I'm stoked for Archimedes 3.0 when you go after conquesting. So you're going for retouch right now. Now you're going to go for profiling at the bottom of the conversion funnel. Then I'm going to be rubbing my hands and say, as an old man, I'll be 70 or so by the time, and I'll be like, Steven, are we going after conquesting, man? Are we going to start poaching Republicans who are liberty-leaning, Democrats who are liberty-leaning? Figure out the profile. Why limit yourself to undecided or independents or former libertarians? Go conquest those guys and figure out how we're going to get them into our party, because that's the better place to be. That's all exciting news, Hodey, wouldn't you say?
I think it's exciting news. I think it's a lot of hard work, and I really appreciate that you're focusing on the hard work, that you're contacting the people that you need to contact. I think it sounds to me like when you talk about like Jim Babka and other people that have like a successful history and like kind of know what they need to do this, to have, anybody who is trying to decrease the size of government and is actually occasionally Slade Goliath, like you gotta listen to them, right? To be like, what did you do? I think we listened to a lot of people, like the people before you were obviously listening to Goliath and figuring out exactly how David should make friends, right? And so we're in this situation, you were in this situation where you had very few rocks in your slingshot. And just, I think I saw the thing about the money like a week ago. And then I saw the thing about the elections like yesterday. And frankly, this is not a place, even when you took back over, I think the LP is dead sentiment was pretty overwhelming among a lot of people that wanted the LP to succeed, even, right?
Reason Magazine was commenting we were going to die. I mean, it was the point where I think a lot of people were sincerely thinking that this is it. This is it for the LP.
So yeah,
we made it 50 years. We had a good run, and
right.
We'll just have to move to Argentina. I don't know.
I mean, when you're hemorrhaging 15K a month, and it didn't look like, and I guess just the months after, like obviously we had the sellout and it just nosedived, right? And I mean, we had Angela bragging to the Free State, speech that she gave about how she directed donors and voters to Trump as opposed to like Chase and the Libertarian Party. She directed them towards the Republican Party. And so when you have that kind of intentional sabotage, it's just unfathomable to me that the car can be put back together, I guess. Thinking about it that way, they took the engine out, they destroyed this, they wrecked that. And hearing you just being like, so I contacted the guy I needed to get an engine from. And I contacted all these people who need to give me the oil every month to make this happen. And
he contacted the mechanic, the body guy, everything.
And I'll be honest, like even when you told me about Archimedes, I was like, I love it because I think I told you at the time, I was like, this is your actual job. I want it to work. It's the thing you should be doing. But in my head, I'm just like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. Right. Like I was like, there's no way based on what's happened to this point. And so I just think it's astounding, I think, to pull off the like you said, you apparently already had a positive money month, then got another $44,000. Now you're getting all these election wins. And I mean, the LP is back. And there really is. I mean, all credit to you. This is a leadership thing. Because if you don't take the actions that you take, and if there's no LP Alliance work going on, and if you just let LPNH continue doing what it's doing and tanking everything and being a liability, and there's no pushback against those people in the LNC who were just, I'm sorry, but frankly, they feel like Trump plants, right? Like, just MAGA plants. I don't know what they were doing, right? And like, I know they're basically gone at this point, and the state parties are to thank for a lot of that, but at least your responses in the emails to be like, no, that's not how we're going to do things here. Like, we needed that leadership at the top. I think we were so scared that we weren't going to get it. And not that it was a matter of personality against you. It was just that they kneecapped you so bad that I didn't see how anybody was going to recover, which is why I just wanted to, I think just wanted to shower all the praises that I can, because this is hard work. This is actually your job, right? And you are actually doing it. And to go into this election cycle and come off with wins, is with how little money you had, and to just focus on what you needed to do. You said it earlier, 2/3 of your races were wins. So, you were aware you didn't really have the money that like back in the Sarwark days that we had to run in every election, right? And so you're just like, what can we actually do? And you did what you could actually do and supported the people you could actually support. And like I said, the Libertarian Party account, if you guys haven't followed them, like follow them, and just you're going to keep scrolling down all the wins we got. And like, right. And like you said, like, is there like a tax assessor and stuff like that? Of course, right? But like, that's still a win. That is still somebody that is competing against a Republican and a Democrat that won. And that is incredibly difficult to do. And so when you focused like you did and got a 2/3 victory, I don't know, Stephen, I can't say enough. Like, I'm just floored by the whole thing. I have a lot, I think, as a former Republican strategist and somebody who kind of understands the general election stuff all too well, it takes a lot to surprise me. And this was very surprising. And so I guess congrats on being somebody who did the head nose to the grinder, head down, push through it work that you had to do. I know it's not fun. It is nothing that I would do, but but you were the kind of guy to make it happen. So just, man, props and enjoy it. I'm sorry you're sick, but you deserve to be. It's supposed to be like illness sick. You deserve to be like hungover sick. I mean,
I'm working on it. I have
okay, good.
I might crack into it tonight.
And hey, Stephen, I share in Hodey's enthusiasm, and I just wanted to say one thing, man. I'm gonna lay a little ancient Greek on you. And whenever anybody gives you shit about what you're doing, you just say "mitou skiklus tarete." That's something that supposedly Archimedes said when a Roman foot soldier arrived in Syracuse and tried to erase all his circles. And while this guy was holding a sword over his head, he said, "Hey, don't F with my circles. Don't mess with my circles," right? And I feel after hearing Hodey's, like, very positive recounting of what you've accomplished, which I share, of course, I feel you've earned the right to say it. And if you want, I'll send it. If anybody gives you any shit about Project Archimedes or anything, you just tell them that. Shut up, mind your business. I'm doing well here. And I think you've earned that. And maybe we'll teach you a little ancient Greek while you're at it.
I'm not going to try to say it yet. I might practice it a few times first.
I'll send it to you phonetically, sure. Our friend Angela from Michigan, who was one of the folks instrumental in changing the leadership there at the state level in Michigan. Question for Stephen. Any chance of bringing back a physical newsletter? I still remember how impressed I was back in the day when I saw all the election winners in print. And she's right. There's something about the tactile feel of seeing a physical newsletter or a newspaper article or magazine or something. Maybe it's just my age and her age showing through, but any plans for a physical newsletter or a newsletter in general?
Well, I'll tell you this, the mailer that we sent out that made us $40,000, we spent $2,900 on that mailer. And I think it was the content of that letter and the list that we drafted that was the real value there. But we had a like 20x return almost. So we had a 15x, whatever it is. So I think there is value. I think we don't do a good enough job about bragging about our wins and showing people that we are doing constructive things, because when people see that, they're going to invest. When they don't hear from us for years, they just assume they don't need me. They're probably doing well without me. Maybe I don't need them. Maybe I haven't heard anything in a long time. So I'm open to it. I think the newsletter's always been on the chopping block because it cost us a lot of money. Mailers are on the chopping block. I think our last mailer we sent out was maybe in 2022 or so. We sent one out. I think that was the last one we sent out because these things cost money. But as you know, in business, sometimes you have to spend money to make money. You have to, provided it's the right thing. If I go into my stores and we're spending money on food, of course, sometimes if the AC breaks, I got to spend money. I got to drop 15 grand on an AC. Advertising, we spend about 4% of our budget on advertising, in our business. And so, the reality is you got to send things out. You got to show what you're doing. So I'm open to it. I think it might be a good idea, something to revisit, something I think we've actually mentioned recently. So if there's any writers out there that also want to help assist with that kind of thing and help with the editorials and come up with stories and human pieces and things like that and victories and what's going on, hit me up, chair@lp.org. We'd love to hear from you. But we might consider putting that back out there. I think that might be something really
cool. Well, keep an eye out.
Do a digital version too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Angela, keep your fingers crossed. Maybe you'll get that physical newsletter soon. Free says, Stephen is the adult in the party we needed. He's a successful guy who brought us success.
Thank you.
Funny how that works. Yeah, Free, it is kind of funny how that works, isn't it? Instead of being like a revivalist preacher light trying to lead the party. Let's see. I'm just going quickly through the Free also says, somehow I got RFK emails after the convention, but not LP emails. Yeah, Free, I hear you. There's a lot of that going around. So Stephen, great work. We can't reiterate how happy, and I'm pretty sure our audience is pretty happy too, because for those that are watching this show, we don't have LP folk. I'm saying Mises folks watching this show, right? For the most part, we're all blocked on their lists. But for the audience that does come to this show, they've I'm sure they're just as happy as Hodey and I are with what you were able to accomplish. And certainly, please keep up the good work. Let's end this on a couple of minutes. I want to spend. Give me your thoughts on the national implications of the
Sure.
elections on Tuesday. We kind of touched on the Mamdani race in New York. The only time we care about a mayoral race probably is New York, Chicago, and LA, maybe because of the national visibility on those things. Very quickly, you kind of touched on it. Tell me what your thoughts about what happened in New York. Ballot stuff aside, what do you see happening? And is there an opportunity here in New York? Our friend Larry Sharp has decided to run for governor again in 26. Talk to us
Yeah.
about libertarianism in New York a little bit.
Yeah, so a lot of people have been asking me what I thought about Mamdani. I actually, if you guys check it out, I did a great interview yesterday with Professor Zhang. He's a professor out of Beijing. We did it on all of our platforms. Really, really interesting guy. He's blown up on YouTube recently for successfully predicting the strikes on Iran a year before it happened. So we actually broached on this topic a little bit. And the whole Mamdani thing, I mean, first off, what I'll say is, Big John, we're going to be taking a lot of your refugees down here in Florida.
You probably are if they're not already on their way there. You're absolutely right.
So I think a lot of the part-timers down here in Key West are going to become full-timers here pretty soon. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mamdani, he wants to make a lot of things free. He wants to increase taxes. He wants to provide all these services. What's going to end up happening in New York is, I don't know. I don't know if is it going to be a fiscal crisis? Is it going to be, where is New York going to go from here? How are they going to enjoy their socialism over over in your city? I think it's an indicator. I think it's a cultural shock. I think it's a political shock. I mean, for years we've seen card-carrying socialists being elected in places like Portland and Chicago and other municipalities. So it's nothing new, but it's the first time we've seen a major city be governed by a socialist and win with a solid majority. And I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about Gen Z really being at the political polls, the outer polls, because they're very low institutional trust. And I think this is globally, it's not just in the United States.
Right.
They don't believe the current system works. So they're saying, well, what else is out there? And that's fertile ground for the libertarians to come in there and say, look, we believe in freedom. We believe in, you shouldn't try to be, go after safety your whole life and have the government provide for you, because your provider is also the mouth that feeds you can also take away. You want that freedom. You want to be self-actualized. You want growth, and you need freedom as a prerequisite for all those things. It creates a better society, creates a fairer society. It's what made our country great in the beginnings, and it's what drives progress. And here's why it's a good thing. So I think, first off, it tells us we as libertarians need to be doing a better job at being the ambassadors for the movement. Now, most people may have never met a libertarian, so you'll be the first person they meet. Hey, I'm a libertarian. They may be interested in the philosophy, but they're probably more interested in you. When people talk about Mamdani, what do they have to say? Well, he's a young guy. He's not terribly looking. He brings fresh ideas. He's energetic. He's charismatic. Okay, cool. They see that, and he promises some positive things. I'm going to take that over an Andrew Cuomo. I'm going to take that over an older person who I think just works for the establishment. No offense to our boomers out there and anything else, but people, even the older generation's looking to vote for somebody young because they want something different, and they know the current system's not working. And so we need to create myths. And what I mean by that is we need to be good. Not only do you have to be, yes, we know that on an XY graph, supply and demand equal this, and technically the Congressional Budget Office, over 10 years, yada yada yada. Like, yeah, okay, all that stuff is great, but how does that get into the human picture? So we have to get better at drafting myths that the public can catch on to. I think Trump actually did a good job at this. He was a great myth maker, because behind Trump's whole facade, there really isn't much substance.
Right.
I think for the most part, he's very status quo. I don't think there's anything extremely radical that I'm seeing coming out of the Trump administration in terms of, progress. But I think what he did very well is he created a very strong mythos, make America great again, going back to our roots and yada, yada, yada. The Libertarian Party and libertarianism needs to draft these types of myths. I think that's one of the things that led to Javier Milei's success. Is he was charismatic. He had his chainsaw. He was very flamboyant and very very brash, and and it got him to where he is now. And so I'm not saying everybody has to take a whole charisma class, but they need to know how to communicate. They need to dress well. They need to be well groomed, and they need to really get in touch with the average person's basic needs. So if you're running for office, what are the things that people care about in your community? Get involved. When I ran for city commission in Key West, I didn't win, but I had an outcome on the election. I got involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the board of director for the Chamber of Commerce. I'm involved in emergency services. I know my whole city commission. I know the mayor. I talk to them all. I know the movers and shakers in my municipality. So I'm ingrained. I'm involved in the political structure of my community, and that started with running for office. And I took that, even though I didn't win, and I turned it into a success.
Right.
Because now in the future, when I rerun, I'm much better slated, and I actually have people tapping me now to run again. And there's so these things take time, and I think for our libertarians on the ground, it's like, look, you don't just want to go out there and just go run for office. Maybe start out small, city commissioner, but get involved in your community. If you're a business person, if you represent a business, join the chamber. Get involved with your Rotary Club. Get involved. Go to city commission meetings. Speak on a subject you're passionate about. If you see something in the agenda, speak about it. Be cordial, be respectful, but have an opinion. They'll notice you. They'll see that, and they'll be a little afraid of you too. And so that is so important, is being involved in your local community. Being able to communicate, creating those myths, because I really do think there's fertile ground for the libertarian cause here, not only in the United States but around the globe. I mean. We recently, so the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, we just had a meeting with the core group. We actually are in the process of moving the IALP from Switzerland to Miami, Florida. And so we just had the corporate paper signed. We're going to have a national congress or an international congress of all the member parties to ratify the new constitution. The LNC voted on a constitution. We're going to be headquartered here in the United States. And I'll tell you something so powerful from meeting with all those libertarian parties is they look up to us. Regardless of how much we fight each other and, all the drama and a lot of times the negativity, when it comes to the international audience, they tell us, look, you're the biggest, you're the most well organized, you have a huge impact. Whatever we do, we follow you. And of course, Milei in Argentina, they of course have influence as well, but still we are number one in their eyes. And there's new libertarian parties. I'm seeing them open up every month in different parts of the world. And so we're a global libertarian movement, and we should never lose sight of that. Just like socialism is a global movement, libertarianism is a global movement.
Right.
And so it's not just us. It's other people around the world that want freedom. And I think that tells us the writing's on the wall. I think that over the next 10 years, we can really break out and get into the mainstream. And if we do the right things now to set the stage, so when the spotlight's on us, we're prepared, then we'll be ready to really make a big difference. Because 10 years ago, I mean, when I was in high school back in the day, I didn't know what a libertarian was, and nobody knew it was a libertarian. 10 years ago, it was still kind of the same thing. Now, the word libertarian is much more ubiquitous. You have Stephen Miller calling us out by name. Those damn libertarians. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you. And so
if you made Stephen Miller mad, I mean, that's better than all the election.
Anytime you could fluster Goebbels Jr., I'm all for it. There's absolutely no thing. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
and especially in New York, you look up, you think back, and it's opportunities lost, right? Because this was such a winnable race for any competent candidate. And being a New Yorker, I can't emphasize that enough. The Republican candidate was a 60-year-old ex-vigilante from the 70s, the founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa. The Democratic Party primary, I can't emphasize it enough, was won by somebody who got 6% of the vote. Donnie was nowhere near at the top. Eric Adams had his legal issues weighing him down. He didn't drop out. As a matter of fact, his name was still on the ballot. He dropped out too late to take his name off the ballot. And Cuomo just assumed that, hey, I've got this regal name. I'm royalty in New York. I don't have to do anything. He never campaigned. He tried to pull a Joe Biden. He was campaigning from his basement. Nobody cared about him. And look, he's a socialist. Man, I thought we hit rock bottom in New York when we had a former gun runner for the Sandinistas become mayor, de Blasio, right? And I thought that was the bottom of the barrel. But I got to give credit where credit is due. This guy Mamdani pulled off an AOC. He was in the bodegas. He was in the delis. He was in the clubs. He was in the bars. He'd go to schools. He'd go everywhere he could possibly go. He was there shaking hands, and that big smile of his and youthful energy. And so from that perspective, you're absolutely right. He struck a chord. And hey, what if we had a libertarian candidate running for mayor who could cut that sort of vote for me? I'm here. I have the energy. I want to be mayor. I'm not doing it because it's mine. I'm doing it because I want to earn your trust. And I think Mamdani, better or worse, he did that. And give him credit. He ran a good campaign.
I think after Larry Sharpe wins governor, once he's tired of that and runs for mayor, he can probably clean up New York and reverse a lot of the ills of
You're absolutely right, and we got to figure out a way to get. So that's a good practical question since you brought it up. Is there anything that can be done from national and from LP New York, obviously, to try to get Larry on the ballot? I mean, you mentioned the ballot requirements in New York. It's crazy. It's easier to get on the ballot in Moscow than it is in New York, right? You hit the signature threshold and you only have like 6 weeks to hit like 60, 70,000 signatures, right? And every time the LP hits it, they get into a midnight session and they raise the vote again. They raise the barrier again. It's just, we're determined not to have any serious challengers to the duopoly in New York. What options does the LP have in New York? Is it lawsuits? Is it just, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, you're not going to get a legislative victory. So what are the options in a state like New York?
I think for a state like New York, where they don't have a friendly Secretary of State, our only option is going to be to hit the signature requirements. Unfortunately, Oliver Hall's group in working with Larry, I believe, is actually working with them, as well as Lars Mapstead as well, to work with secretaries of state throughout the country. And many of them are actually open to the idea of lowering the thresholds and making it fair for third parties. I don't think New York is one of those states. I think we're going to have to raise the money. And I think that's unfortunately what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make the signature requirement, and then we're going to have to meet the thresholds in order to maintain that ballot access, which we were able to do for a long time. So there's no reason we shouldn't be able to do it again. But like everywhere else, it's an uphill battle. As soon as we meet the requirements, they change the rules, they raise the requirements to try to sue us off the ballot. In Tennessee, I believe it was either Tennessee or Kentucky, I remember there was a committee, a state committee, that was considering legislation to lower the threshold by far for third parties to get in. It had all the votes on the committee. The committee chair went up to the Senate and said, you know, if we pass this, it would confuse voters, so we're not going to propose it. So time after time after time, wherever we win, we really have to spend a lot of money, and we have to, you know, try to rework the laws while also meeting the ballot access requirements. But it's something we've been able to do for 50 years, and it's something we'll be able to do again. So I'm confident in that. And if Larry's behind it, we'll find out a way to do it. And if we have money solves all of our problems. So.
All right, fair enough. Even more reason to donate. Hodey, what do you want to get in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just go over some observations from the general election that I had. Again, I'm going to put on my status GOP, I worked in hat, some things that I see. So I'm going to talk for a minute as a tactician, not necessarily as somebody what I want to have happen, but simply what I see happening. So the top issue being the economy. And one of the things that I am super excited about is that voters actually have a word for it, because economy is so nebulous. Whereas the voters specifically said affordability this time. We can't afford anything. And Trump just pulled a Biden. Trump was like, hey, this Thanksgiving, you're going to be able to afford so many more things than you were last Thanksgiving. And do you remember when Biden did this for the 4th of July? Do you remember this? Where it was like hot dogs, but minus the buns though. And like burgers, but no cheese anymore. And then he's degrading all the brands, like to arrive at his numbers. And Trump, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it, but just literally did the exact same thing.
Yes.
And so we've got two presidents in a row telling you that it's working. when it's not working. And the thing that drives me crazy about this is that the market reacts instantly. When we put tariffs on somebody, Big John, you remember this, the empty carts started coming out the next day, right?
Yep.
Like it was just like, cool, we're taking those things off the break. You know, when we do a tariff, they did a tariff right back. Like the market reacts so quickly. If he were to remove the price controls that he did in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, like grocery prices would drop by 20% overnight because they went up 20% overnight, right? Like this is not complicated. And so to me, and I don't want to speak for you, Stephen, but I see this as an opportunity for the Libertarian Party because you just had 2 presidents in a row lie and pretend that their plans are working. And they are not working. And plus, we get to talk about legit my favorite subject in the world, economy, because it's the one thing that we have on the parties every time, right? Like we have that above them every time. This issue is so much higher than the others that everything else, like this, the voters' turnout for this was so much higher for this that the other things really had no impact. The second most impactful thing were the brown shirts, right? ICE. And that's astonishing as well in its own way, because immigration control was the second most important thing in the presidential election last year. Now, the brown shirts and ICE abusing their power was the second most important thing to get rid of this year, right?
And this was along the northeastern seaboard where both those things are, meaning like northeastern folks, New York, Massachusetts, all these places, Philly, Pennsylvania, Jersey, they're already paying a higher average cost than the rest of the country. So inflation hits folks in these areas a lot harder. And we're immigration hubs. New York's an immigration hub of both legal and illegal. So the idea of having Trump's personal Marine force in here in our streets, nobody in New York likes it. Even if you were for border control, nobody is for abuse on the streets in their neighborhood.
Yes.
Nobody is. And I think that was very much underestimated by President Trump, Hodey. You're absolutely right. But Stephen, talk to that.
No, absolutely. I know a lot of people in my own community, some who supported Trump, and he's losing a lot of that support because we are a very immigrant intensive community down here in South Florida. Everybody knows somebody who's an immigrant. And many of the people that are in processing for paperwork, even if you have you're filed with to get a green card, but you don't have your green card, the police can still pull you over for, let's say, not stopping at a stoplight on your bicycle or not putting 2 feet down. Well, they're going to pull you over. They're going to ask for papers. If you can't procure those papers, they're going to call in the Department of Homeland Security. They're going to bring in ICE, and they're going to detain those people. And now they have to get on the phone with their lawyer. They're going to go to a detention center for a week, and they might get deported, which is happening left and right. And actually, Key West recently tried to fight that, passed a resolution that the police department would not work with the ICE essentially and DHS. And then Ron DeSantis's attorney came in and they said, look, if by law you have to do this, if you don't do this, then we're going to bring the hammer down. We're going to sue the city. We're going to sue each of you personally. So the majority of the board flipped on that, and we continue to have that issue here in South Florida. And quite frankly, Miami supported Trump quite a bit because they hated socialism. So I think 60-something% of Miami supported Trump. Again, he's losing supporters there. ICE is a big issue. The economy is a huge issue. I can tell you, I'm in the industry. I'm in the beef industry. Beef prices are going up. There's a reason you see chicken ads for Wendy's, because we're trying to push chicken. More profitable.
You don't think that subsidies for American beef growers is going to solve the issue?
Oh no, yeah, no. Where the supply chains are, the price of a Dave single continues to go up. Unfortunately, I'd like to not increase my prices, but no, I think there's a big opportunity for the Libertarian Party to champion affordability. I think there's a big opportunity for us to really champion economics, sound economic policy, free trade, and all the rest. I think probably once we get our list cleaned up and we're reaching out to an order of magnitude more people than we were previously, I think that's a really good opportunity to really start some campaigns. I'm actually working with Brian to get some writers on board. I actually put a call out for some economics writers. Hodey, you can definitely apply as well if you'd like to be involved in this. And anybody else watching this, email me. We want to do a capitalism series, so we want to talk about sound economic policy. We want to really be the champions of free market economics and capitalism and Austrian economics and everything else.
Hallelujah.
And talk about these things, because we don't do it enough. And I get that we're on X, and we'll go out, we'll kind of fight the fight and tweet something or whatever, but that doesn't really do it justice, I don't think. We really need to be out there talking to our own people, reminding them. I subscribe to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They sent out these neat graphs of how tariffs are going to affect us and increase prices and everything else, and they break it down. And I think we should be doing something similar, not only for our own people, but for forward-facing campaigns. Because, I mean, really, when we talk about things, people listen. I mean, when the whole Elon thing happened, I had media blowing up my phone for like a month. When Javier Milei was up for re-election, we got media. When we talk about things, people do come and listen. I mean, when we were putting out anti-war messaging, I got on Nigel Farage's show. I got on to Bill O'Reilly. So the media does try to find guests when we put out things on topics that are prevalent. And we're really the only ones talking about these things in a way that is very unique to libertarianism. So, no, absolutely. I think we should be doing more of that. And that's actually something that I'm hoping we can get started here in the next, in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got your finger on the pulse on this one. So, like, I mean, just because some observations, again, just to continue that I have, the third most hot issue, and I think this one is important because it didn't really impact these elections, and yet a good chunk of the people that showed up said their most important issue was ending that war in Gaza and pulling out of there. And I guess they mixed that in with not killing innocent people on fishing boats in Venezuelan waters. That also, like, that got kind of combined into a single issue, but basically
they're killing all the right people.
Right. Not killing people overseas.
According to
right. Well, we've already, I mean, and it was really devastating when the president of Colombia came out and was like, no, this guy was a fisherman and I can prove it. I mean, we just murdered a guy, and we not only murdered him, but bragged about it. Right. Like, remember when Joe Biden bragged about killing that one guy, and it turned when we were pulling out of Afghanistan, and it turned out he was like an aid worker, like he was carrying water. And like, he was like, I ordered that specifically. I did that. Right. Now Trump's having his moment where he's like, oh yes, I ordered that assassination. It was
here's the video on social media for you to watch over and over. Like,
watch my war crime.
I am stunned that Pete Hegseth, well, Secretary McDrinky drunk there, isn't worried that one day he'll be saying they'll be playing that video in the Hague or something. And he'll be like, well, I was only following orders. Literally, that would be his only defense. I was only following orders, and it's like,
and he pulled the Obama. He called it. It's a kinetic strike.
Right.
It's not a war. It's kinetic action. Right. Such a joke. Well, but like,
when I think it was Pete Hegseth or Trump, I think it was Trump that said we need to start practicing essentially on our own cities. We need to start going into these cities. I think he called it enemy territory or something like that. He called it was some term he used to describe American cities, and saying we need to go in there. We need to basically practice, right? It's concerning to see blasé use of force overseas. It's even more concerning when that rhetoric is being used domestically. I don't really understand. I actually asked Professor Zhang what his opinions were last night on the whole situation in Venezuela. Even he wasn't sure. He thinks maybe it could be about drugs. It could be trying to disrupt international drug trade routes. I personally think it may have something more to do with Chinese and Russian and Korean influence in Venezuela. Which could also, translate into what's going on over in the East and with BRICS and everything else, and a whole conversation about global hegemony. And I see it as the U.S. trying to flex its muscles most of all, because if you really look at it, we're paying $40,000 to drop a bomb on a couple $1,000 boat carrying some cocaine or whatever. It's not going to Florida. It's not going to Mexico. Maybe it's going to some other island where it gets moved up the chain. It's not a significant amount of drugs that's being disrupted. So what's the message? Who's benefiting from this? Well, I think he's rallying support. I think what he's trying to do is to show, hey, I'm serious about this topic. I'm serious about drugs, X, Y, Z, and he also gets to flex on Venezuela and try to project muscle overseas to Venezuela's allies, mainly China and Russia. Because and it doesn't really make any sense, because if the U.S. wanted to, we could buy oil from Venezuela. They'd be happy to sell it to us pretty cheap. I mean, the only reason we don't do it is because of our own sanctions. I'm not sure. I don't believe we buy any Venezuelan oil, as far as I know. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. And the supposed peace president is just starting more conflicts, and it is concerning to me. It's something that I've harped on in my own messaging. That war is a pretty big issue for me, for our own national security, and of course undue suffering. I think if the U.S. does invade Venezuela, which is kind of a question right now, I think it would turn into a Vietnam. I think the U.S. has the power to probably overthrow the government there, but they're prepared. I mean, they've been preparing for this for a long time. They're prepared to fight a protracted guerrilla war. I don't think the American people are interested in another Afghanistan. I don't think they're interested in nation building in Latin America. It's hard to wrap my head around it.
It's interesting, because I think what the Trump administration is trying to do is what they did with Iran, essentially, right? As long as they could tie it to an issue that they could frame in what polls well, they'll try to do it. So they've been very open about, we want regime change. I think regime change would be good. How many of those idiots have gotten up on their press conferences and said that, from Trump to Hegseth to anybody that they bring up there? We're okay with it, right? So in Iran, it was like, well, we're doing it to protect Israel, basically, right? And then in Venezuela, they're setting it up to be, it's because they are invading and poisoning our people, right? It's the same rhetoric as the immigration issue, right? It's an invading army. We're being occupied. We're doing this. We're doing that. They killed people in the streets. Hey, as far as I could tell, no Venezuelan ran up to anybody in the U.S. and jabbed a needle in their arm, right? There were choices of individuals involved there. And we've already, I think it's established that the drug war was 100% a failure, right? And
the drugs won the drug war.
Congratulations, drugs, to anyone.
Exactly. So yay, Trump pardoned Ross, but he is now pursuing military means for much of the same stuff he was accused of, which was all basically drug related. Let me just quickly catch up on everything. And by the way, folks, thanks to Stephen for joining us tonight. Please feel free. Go check him out at Stephen Nekhaila on X. Go check him out on through the LP account at LP National. Also go to LP.org if you feel like helping out there. And hey, help your buddies here on Free for All. Check out that subscribe QR code over Hodey's shoulder. Click on that. Some of you already have. Greatly appreciate it. It'll take you to our YouTube page. You can subscribe for free, or all our contact info is scrolling across the bottom down there. Follow us on YouTube, X, Facebook. We really appreciate it. It really helps us grow, really helps us keep doing what we're doing here. Let's also get some comments in here. Terry says, you were talking about branding, Stephen. He goes, Mom, make America liberty-minded. We need means. And actually, I thought of one when I saw that. Why don't we go with Gala? Give America liberty again. Gala, right? We can make it a party. Throw ourselves a party. Throw ourselves a gala, too.
Gala.
I don't know. Well, I'm spitballing it here. You can't expect too much from
Gala at your boy.
There you go. Mark says, I would say I'm aligned more with Mises, and I'm watching. Hey, all are welcome, Mark. I didn't mean to insult anybody. I just didn't figure there were too many Mises folks watching.
I was once aligned more with Mises, Mark.
Yeah, and a lot of our friends now, I think Angela and Karen Ann and all these other folks who were Mises aligned, and Stephen may have been Mises aligned at one point, right, Stephen? And certainly we consider them friends. So, Mark, if you enjoy watching us and hate us, if you hate watch us, or if you enjoy what we have to say, you're welcome either way, brother. Feel free to watch the show whenever the mood strikes you. Okay, Stephen, let's give you the last word. You definitely, again, we want to thank you for the great work you've done and for the great results we saw this week and in the months we said the positive cash flow. Let me give you the last word, man.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for having me on once again. I just want to say thank you. And and I want to say too, if somebody's Mises, if they're classical liberal caucus, American Liberty Caucus, it doesn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, I'm all about, how do we get the work done? If we're aligned on a goal, let's go after that goal, because
Right.
at the end of the day, hopefully we all want the same thing, right? We all want liberty. We all want to see it happen. So how do we get there? And, as somebody who's into business, I view my job as I look at the LNC as a business, and I see some positive prospects for things that can get better and better. I'm looking forward to the future. I am optimistic. I do. There's a plan in place, and we're going to go after it, and I look forward to it. So I'm happy about how things have progressed so far. I think there's a lot more room for growth, and I look really forward to it. And I'll say, as always, if you're interested in Libertarian Party and you're not signed up yet, head over to lp.org, sign up to our newsletter. It's for free. You can also become a dues-paying member for $25. You don't have to change voter registration or anything like that, but you do get our newsletter. You get to support all the work we're doing in the LP. And we have our convention coming up in 2026 in Grand Rapids. There is a link online. You can actually sign up, buy your package. You can even book your room. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. We will be in Dallas, Texas in December. So if anybody's in Dallas, we are going to be holding an event there. So come on by, come join us, hang out, and have a drink. It'll be a blast. We'll have our LNC meeting there, and we look forward to it. And again, thanks, John Hodey, for having me on, and I appreciate it as always.
Anytime. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on Free for All. Hey, we had a great conversation today. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Join us again next Thursday night for another episode of Free for All. For my friend and co-host, Mr. Hodey Johns, I am Big John. We'll catch you all next week. Thank you, everybody. Peace.